So, American boxing great Antonio Tarver has recently done a video in the last 24 hours giving his take on the upcoming fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu in Australia on the 25th of July. I thought it was an interesting video to hear some of his initial thoughts on the fight. He's certainly an extremely intelligent fighter, Antonio Tarver, so it was interesting to listen to some of his thoughts. One of the things that he pointed out early in the video is that he would have liked to have seen Errol Spence have a tune-up fight just to get rid of some of that ring rust, which has been a pretty universal thought.
But right now, man, it's Errol Spence coming back after almost a 3-year hiatus. And we know the last time we saw him was in the ring against pound-for-pound undisputed Bud Terrence Crawford. So that's all we have to really go on, bro. And we want to, think that Errol Spence is at his complete best, that he's had a tremendous training camp. But from everybody on the outside looking in, we don't really know. All we have seen is a little bit of heavy bag work he's done. Haven't seen no real sparring or anything out there. So, other than wishing Errol Spence the very, very best in this situation, everything remains to be seen, bro. We just going to have to call it after this fight. We can hope for a lot of things. And I believe, he's going to give it his best. But when you look at the circumstances surrounding this fight and the fact that, really when you look at who's the A side, everything's favoring Tim Tszyu. Everything's favoring Tim Tszyu, man. He's fighting a more comfortable weight. Even the weight, it's not 154, it's 158. They're closer to the middleweight division. And Errol has never fought that heavy before, even though we know, he gets, a little bit heavy. But far as competing, moving around in that ring and really carrying that weight, with everything I know about boxing, I wouldn't have been mad at him having a real tune-up against a mid-range guy, maybe 20-11 or something, a guy that's just going to, give him some rounds, but can knock the ring rust off. And that's like a thing of the past. Guys just don't do that. They rather get the big bucks and roll the dice, so to speak. But yeah, man, I think Tim Tszyu, being at home, all of his fans going to be there. They giving Tim Tszyu a lot of momentum coming into this fight. A lot of momentum. Even though as of late, especially with the Fundora fights, he took a lot of punishment. And right now, people don't really know if he's not a shot fighter at this time. We don't know that. So again, everything will be, revealed on fight night.
And one of the other things that he questions for both fighters actually was their current level of punch resistance. Now, both have had some pretty tough fights. Errol Spence coming off that loss against Terrence Crawford, and also Tim Tszyu with his losses against Sebastian Fundora and Bakram Murtazaliev. And so it's a valid question as to how much punch resistance both fighters have left. It's something that does tend to go when fighters have been in wars in previous fights. Another thing that Tarver highlighted was the strengths of both fighters. Tim Tszyu is known as fighting with a big heart, very courageous fighter, and that's certainly one of his pluses. And with Errol Spence, he's known for having a very strong jab in that southpaw stance and then looking to work combinations off that.
How much energy will Errol Spence come with? We know he likes sort of like a methodical plotter in there at times, just coming forward. And I think Tim Tszyu gonna meet him right there. Tim ain't going nowhere, bro. He's a real fighter, and the last thing leave is somebody's punching power. And one thing about it, even in the Fundora fight, Tim Tszyu fought, bro. He even in the second fight, he was landing though. You know what I mean? He gonna get his off. We just don't know if he can receive the power or have the punch resistance that he used to have. You know, and we'll see how sharp Errol gonna be after almost 3 years off. Will it take 4 or 5 rounds for him to get in his rhythm? And he's gonna need his rhythm in this fight. Behind a real controlling jab, he's gonna have to control Tim Tszyu, everything, you know, right there in front of him. He's gonna have to keep that jab in his face. And I think his activity is gonna be important. Is he throwing combination punches, or is he just, you know, in there loading up with one shot, you know?
But on the negative side, he pointed out once again in regards to the punch resistance with Tim Tszyu and really highlighting it as wear and tear. Those fights would have taken a lot out of Tim Tszyu, especially the first one against Fundora. And you just don't know whether somebody is, I'd hate to say it, a shot fighter. It's a terrible term to use, but the reality is with all that wear and tear, there's question marks over Tim Tszyu with that. With Errol Spence, again, he highlighted that he hasn't fought in 3 years and there will be some certain elements of ring rust, and that is the sort of open question going into this fight with Errol Spence.
Is he tapped in with his quick twitch muscles? Is he, you know, is he coming off of just the counter shots? You know, is he making it, is he defensive minded? So we know he goes good to the body. I think that's, you know, is something he'll be able to do, you know, every time he step in the ring. But can he make these guys miss? Can he give these guys angles? Can he use that footwork? Can he use that footwork, bro? You know, that remains to be seen. But and again, Errol Spence ain't no spring chicken, bro. We talking about a guy 36 years old, you know what I mean? And he's fighting a guy 31. Let's keep that in mind. Age, you know, father time undefeated. So
one thing with my take on the video that he's pointed out there leading into this fight is actually a thought of, is this fight with Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu, is it going to be like Antonio Tarver coming to Australia to fight Danny Green and getting a solid victory and actually stopping Green in that fight? Or is it going to be a Roy Jones Jr. coming to Australia to fight Danny Green and getting stopped in the first round? Could we see either of those with Errol Spence Jr.? Yeah, definitely. It is a 50-50 fight going into it without breaking it down to the real technical parts of it. But because of the unknowns of both fighters, is it going to be a Roy coming to Australia and very sadly remember watching it, getting stopped by Green? Or is it going to be like Antonio Tarver coming and just overpowering his opponent, Danny Green, in that fight? We'll wait and see. It's just interesting to look at the videos of these experts, people that have been in the ring at the highest level. You know, they're the ones that you really need to listen to hear their thoughts on different fights coming up.